Voyeurism in movies has always proved to be one of the most thrilling and suspenseful aspects. The quiet backdrop and eerie feeling of what's about to happen always serves as a great potboiler. But rarely has it served solely as character pieces for the voyeur and the victim. These are the movies that are made only to let you inside the characters' heads. We get to know why the character chooses to pry, rather than what happens when they do it. We've seen this done brilliantly in Francis Ford Coppola's The Conversation and Park Chan-wook's Old Boy, or even Yash Chopra's Dar, which is part of its own stalker subgenre. But never has it felt more personal than our pick of the week, The Lives of Others. The Lives of Others is a German film set in the 1980s with the falling of the Berlin Wall as its backdrop. It tells the story of an East German officer named Wiesler who's been given a mission to spy on a playwright and his actor girlfriend. Draymond, who's the playwright, is suspected to be plotting against the establishment because of his anti government views that are evident in his works. Now, the film is heavily loaded with political discourse, and it does a great job in showing us what the political climate was back in 1984 Germany. But above all this, The Lives of Others tells a story of three individuals whose lives, willingly and unwillingly, are entangled with each other. And that is what I want to talk about today. So, at the center of all the drama is our protagonist, Weasler. When we meet Weasler at the beginning of the movie, he's this stringent, rigid, hard to break kind of guy. The only thing that matters to him is to get the job done, regardless of the means that are used to get there. The sequence in the beginning switches between two locations, one where he's interrogating a suspect, and the other where he's teaching a bunch of students the technique of breaking down a suspect through the recording of the interrogation. There's a moment in this scene where one of his students asks him as to why he's tiring out the suspect and keeping him awake for so long, as it's inhuman to do so. To which he replies that an innocent suspect would get angrier after a few hours, but a lying one would actually get calmer or even start crying. So, in order to determine their legitimacy, they need to be kept up. He also notes down the name of the student who asked the question, somewhat indicating that he deems the student to not really be adequate enough for this type of work. It's a brilliantly written scene because you get to know how stringent he is about his values. And this is important for the movie to establish because it becomes that surprising for us when we see him having conflict of interest when he starts eavesdropping on Draymond and his girlfriend Krista. So the question arises here that what makes such a rigid guy deviate from his ideology so much? The movie does not give a clear answer to this, and that's where I think the movie's mastery lies. But what I could take away is that Weasler, after a certain point, sees something in their life that he doesn't have in his own. And that's a sense of togetherness, a feeling of belonging to someone. He doesn't have that, and he starts envying that about them. And their lives are not perfect. Draymond is in constant paranoia because of his political standpoints that he knows will get him into trouble someday. And he's also half convinced that someone is monitoring him. Krista, his girlfriend, on the other hand, is being blackmailed by men to work against Draymond. But amongst all this, they still have each other. Weasler, as compared to them, is leading a much more sorted life. He's not the one living in constant danger. And still, he sympathizes with them to a point where he even risks losing his job. It's hard to explain how beautifully they've captured the scenes where he's listening to them while they are just coexisting for each other. There are many sequences of this that I want you to experience on your own, but I'd like to mention a couple of them which would give you an idea of what you're signing up for. If you want to experience even these firsthand, then feel free to skip ahead. So, the first instance of this is when Krista has gone through something really bad. She's lying on the bed, and Raymond walks in the room and sits on the bed right behind her. He doesn't know what to say at that point, and Krista tells him to just hold her. That's all she wants. And while he's holding her, we see Weasler listening to them with his eyes closed and hugging the back of his own chair. This is the first time we see him have empathy for them. In the second instance, he's listening to Draymond play a tune on his piano that moves him so much that he starts crying. At the end of the piece, Draymond asks Krista as to how someone who's truly heard this piece be a bad person. Well, this line has another meaning as well, which you would find out when you watch the movie. But I think it's also somewhat indirectly talking about Weasler, who's so moved by it. These two sequences and many more like these have stayed with me for a long time. It is telling a story which is about 40 years old, but it's so relatable, especially in this day and age where a lot of our time is consumed by just going online and checking what other people are up to. We're all guilty of comparing our lives with celebrities or acquaintances when we see them having the time of their lives. So, if you can relate to this, then I think you'll have more than a few things that you'll take away from this movie. So please let us know in the comments what you thought about it. We're trying new things here, trying new genres, and we need you to tell us what works for you and what doesn't. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe. We're bringing you recommendations every week, and we love you regardless, but we also need your support. So, this is me signing off until next week. Bye.